We heard today, Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you looking for?" Rather than instruct these simple fishermen as to what he, the Son of God, was looking for, he simply inquired as to what their needs and their desires might be. Despite the limited time he had to convey the greatest message of salvation he had for them, he simply asked what he could do to fulfill their needs. Although sometimes not that easy to see, that Christianity does still exist today. In 1970, naval aviator, then Lieutenant Commander John McCain, sat in a cell in the notorious Hanoi Hilton prison, where McCain and a few hundred other men were being held as prisoners of war by the North Vietnamese army. The high point of their inhumane and lowly existence came each evening for McCain and the other men when one of the prisoners would remove his shirt, turn it inside out, and then the group, while focused on the shirt, would recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Mike Christian, among other things, was a skilled embroiderer. Subsequently, he had embroidered the flag of the United States on the inside of his shirt. One day, while searching the cell, the Vietnamese discovered the flag. Later that evening, they called Mike from his cell and beat him profusely for all the others to hear. They removed his embroidered shirt, issued him a new one, and eventually threw him back into his cell. His companions cared for their friend and his wounds as best they could, until they could finally do no more for him. McCain recounts that as some of the men lay down to go to sleep that night, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Christian try to regain his composure. Then, through eyes that were almost swollen shut as a result of the beatings, Mike removed his shirt, and with his makeshift needle and a few pieces of thread, he started work on the first of 13 stripes, with 50 stars to follow. Mike Christian, a man who didn't even wear a pair of shoes until he was 13, brought the generosity and caring of Christ to his brothers in need in a prison in Hanoi, because he knew what they were looking for. Father Thomas Vanderwood, one of 7 brothers, recalls in the magazine of the Knights of Columbus, the magazine known as Columbia, how he was called to the emergency room one night to anoint 2 men whose deaths appeared to be imminent. Upon arrival at the hospital, Father Vanderwood discovered that the men in question were his father and his youngest brother Joseph, a child with Down syndrome. Earlier that day, young Joseph had fallen into a septic tank at the family farm and was in danger of drowning. When his distraught father realized what had happened, he jumped into the septic tank, and with the level of the effluent over his head, he stretched his arms out as high as he could and held his son up so he could breathe and call out for help, until eventually help did arrive. Some days after the event, young Joseph was discharged from the hospital. Mr. Vanderwood gave his life for his child. He knew exactly what his child wanted and needed. He knew what his son was looking for. These are heroic acts of mammoth proportion, acts that most, if not all of us, will never be called to perform. But heroism comes in various shapes and sizes. As followers of Jesus, we are all called to be heroes. We are called to be heroes to those who don't have what we have, to those who will never be what we have become. To those who will never, ever be able to do what we can do. We are called to emulate the Christ of today's gospel. And the more fortunate we are, and the more serious we are about walking in the footsteps of Jesus, the more the onus is on each one of us to ask of our brothers and sisters in Christ, with compassion and genuine caring, what are you looking for?